know why it does that.
You know it's coming this time.
Yep. And it looks like we're live here for episode, I believe, 16 of Dude, What's the Bid? My name's Kevin Hill with Brush Pass Research here, as always, with my co-host, Casey Larkin, over at Fairlanes. How are you doing today, Casey?
Doing well. Thanks for asking, Kev. Doing a live stream from Jacksonville, Florida today for the first time. So excited about that. But episode 16, episode 17, certainly one of those two. And I think we got a good one in store.
I think we do too. So you're in Jacksonville now. So you're officially a Florida man.
Officially a Florida man. Exactly. I feel like I've identified with the Florida man for a long time. So glad to finally be connecting the dots.
I know it's weird. Florida just has the weirdest stories that pour out of it, and you think about the size of it, you're in Florida now. I'm sitting in Texas now. You just don't have the weird stories. Mitch from Tai Software, who'll be joining us in just a few minutes. He's our special guest. He's in California. You see some California stories, but, there's nothing like a Florida man story.
Very true. It's very true. You never know what you're going to get in the great state of Florida, the Sunshine State. Everything from, Miami to the swamp. It leaves a lot of room for some creative boys.
It really does. It does. I think I think the people who migrate to Florida are just a little bit different than people who migrate other places. It's somewhat like they're trying to escape. Not everybody, right? But you do find that theme in there. But in other news, it's a good sports weekend. Football season is back. I don't know. Is the NFL playing this week or is it next week that they start?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
From today. Ravens and Chiefs.
That'll be a good Thursday night starting off point. College football, though, is back this weekend.
Right.
OU gear, setting up for it. Baseball is entering the final stages before the playoffs. The big playoff runs that the O's are out there. So it's interesting. It's not 110 degrees here. It's 95. Yeah. So fall is in the air. The weather broke, right? That humid, horrible weather kind of broke this week. And it feels nice. So
through the fire and flames, baby. On to Q4.
On to Q4. We're just turning the corner. And talking about turning the corner, Q4, freight market, FreightTech. We have a great guest with us this week from Tai Software. He's the CEO over there, and that is Mitch Mitchell. And we'll bring him up right now. Hey, Mitch.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Kevin, Casey, thanks for having me.
You bet. Anytime. Yeah. It's we're just talking about it right now, sports and everything. But yeah, we're almost to Q4. We're getting there. One more month and we'll be in Q4.
It is coming quick. I was thinking too, as I was listening to you guys start out, the three of us are really in a unique position. I mean, between the Florida, we got Florida man and all the stories that come from Florida. Texas is no slouch in the media either.
No.
And in California, we take our fair share of a beating. So I'm pretty sure we could do a full hour just on how chaotic all three of our states are. I would say we're probably the most prolific states in the union, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. Talk about like land area and population wise, they're the three biggest, right?
Yeah. Well, and also like the amount of stuff that comes from our states, right?
I mean,
Obviously there's some other very big important states too, and but yeah, we get a lot of stories from our states. It's pretty fun.
I know, right? And they're much different too, right?
Very
Florida man and Texas man and California man stories are just different. It's like
yeah.
different genres of
Yeah.
craziness.
Oh yeah, very different, right? So keep us entertained, that's for sure.
It does. It definitely does. So Mitch, how's everything over at Tai? How's 2024? What's cooking?
Yeah. Tai's been really fortunate to be in a great spot. We've been doing really well the last couple years. It's been a great adventure. It's been a great thing to be a part of, and to be a part of the team that's here at Tai, because we've been having so much fun and we've been doing so many cool things. That's been really cool. Now 24 has been a little tougher, right? I mean, I think we've all heard that the freight market's a little tougher than it had been, and that continues to be a theme. I'm still waiting for somebody with that crystal ball to tell us when it's going to be over. I've heard we're at the bottom. I've heard we've seen the worst. I've heard we're on the rise. I've heard it's going to stay slow. I really wish we had a crystal ball to tell me when it was going to turn.
I do too. I wish I had a crystal ball too. I do think we're at the bottom. I think we've probably seen the worst. On the rise, wait and see. Hopefully, if you want to be optimistic, definitely hope. But it could be it's kind of been a long bottom as well too. So
yeah,
I wish I had that crystal ball. I guess in other words, right?
I know. I was counting on you, Kevin. I was counting on you.
I know, right? I know. I just don't have the crystal ball. So we'll continue to power through it, though, right?
Yeah. It's been interesting from Tai's perspective that, as a software provider, we're a little insulated from some of the day-to-day freight changes that happen.
Yep.
But we do see the transactions, and part of our model is that, we get paid on the freight transactions that move through our system. But it has been interesting that what we've seen is some of our top brokers have seen significant increases in volume this year, and like to the tune of some 30, sometimes 40%. But then we've seen a lot of our smaller brokers really struggling. And just for context, we only work with freight brokers, so that's all we see are the broker space. But it's been a real interesting dynamic, and to see how that's been going on. And it hasn't just been large and small that have been succeeding and struggling. It's been varied through it, but we have seen a lot more growth in our customer base than we expected. But on that same note, we also run LTL and full truckload are kind of the two primary modes.
Yeah.
And with the YRC shakeup from, when did that happen?
That's a good question.
Almost a year? Has it been a year?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
Trying to think if it was earlier this year or was it about this time last year. And
right. That's what made me hesitate. I was trying to make sure I don't misquote this. I mean, it was a pretty big event. We should know when it happened, right?
I know, right?
I think it was a year plus. I mean, I think
yeah,
the last year has really flown by, if that's the case.
Yeah, it really does go by fast, but that could be impacting part of what we see as increases as well, is some of the redistribution of freight from YRC. There was an article that I read today from Kurt Coots at Trinity that talked about what happened with YRC and kind of a retrospective on it, and it was really cool to read. But one of the things that he talked about, and I think is really demonstrative of what our industry is it only really took like 90 days for that freight to redistribute and for the carriers to rebalance, and that's pretty impressive, to redistribute one of the largest LTL carriers in our space, and to be able to redistribute that freight and keep people's products moving and on the shelf. And it's an impressive feat. So it's cool to see that kind of resilience in our space, especially because we catch so much heat on the other side, right? Where we've had some struggles, and especially on the international side and so forth.
So it was just at a year ago, right, that they officially filed for bankruptcy. It was early August, so around August 7th. Getting some reports 7th, 9th. So early August. So you had to lead up to that in July. So yeah, just right at a little over a year.
Yeah, time goes by fast.
It does. It really does. But yeah, with TMS systems and other parts of the FreightTech, of course, we all hurt on a slower market. But that doesn't necessarily dissuade buyers from evaluating and making changes and adopting new items, as they should be preparing for the upswing in the market, right? And TMS system is market neutral in a lot of ways, right? It's you need a TMS whether the market's great or it's in the garbage, right? You need it. So, and I think there's a lot of hangover that from 2021 of everyone reevaluating their tech stack, right? And
For sure.
I have seen kind of inclinations of that reevaluation of making sure that you're prepared for the next market upswing and growth.
Yeah, and we talk about this quite a bit, but we think it's really important to evaluate that tech stack in a strong market and in a weak market. Right? In a strong market, it's about scalability, and if you don't have good technology tools to support you, then as your company's starting to grow, like we were talking about YRC, if you're a freight broker and then all of a sudden your LTL volume increases by 30% in a day, what are you going to do? We know for sure that your staff is going to suffer, right? They may be able to pull it off because people are tremendously resilient and can make miracles happen, but they're going to hurt, right? It's going to be painful. Having a good tech stack, though, allows you to scale that a little bit faster. So as you grow, that scale is there. And then on the opposite side, it's equally as important. If the market's contracting and struggling, you need that operational efficiency, right? You got to focus on how can I make my business as efficient and effective as possible? How can I make sure that I'm treating my customers as good as I can? And that comes into things like letting your TMS handle the automation, letting your TMS do most of the busy work, and make sure your staff is managing relationships. Make sure your staff is on the phone talking to your customers, asking them for freight, and being proactive in those sides. So running a smart business, I think, all ties into having a good tech stack very nicely, regardless of whether we're growing or retracting. And being attentive to that is so important on the everyday, just every single day of our careers.
For sure. It's interesting, being in, hopefully what's the end of a down market. I'm sure you guys have been focused on making sure that the tech is something that enables the brokers in an environment like this to, be on the horn with their customers, take the busy work off of their hands, if you will. Is there anything you guys are thinking about or working on from a development perspective or from an internal PI perspective to make sure that these customers are positioned for that growth when the market does swing?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the key principles that we lean in on is we call it operational excellence. And what operational excellence means to us is to always be paying attention to what the person in the chair needs. What does the broker who's moving freight every day need to be great at their job? So there's a couple easy ones in there, right? Automation is critical to that process. But some of the specific things we've been doing in there is, for example, workflow automation is a tool that we have. And the workflow automation is about allowing triggers and steps to happen when something happens to a shipment, right? So it gives you a flexibility to build your TMS around what you need for your brokerage, and maybe even for your specific customer. So maybe you have a customer that requires a status update every 4 hours, which maybe is a little ridiculous, but they require that.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, some do, right?
Yeah.
And so when that happens, we can automate that and set it so it sends them an email like, hey, this is where these shipments are, and keeps them updated. So you have that kind of flexibility in your TMS, as well as like customization of alert workflows. So for example, maybe it's not something we want to notify our customer of, but maybe we want to automatically put a shipment on hold when a new accessorial comes in after the fact, or when we're 3 hours from delivery location, so we can start contacting the lumpers. Whatever it might be, we can trigger these kinds of customizable alerts, customizable workflows, and assignments to either teams or individuals. And this gives you kind of an overall flexibility around your TMS to let it operate the way your customers need you to operate, and then lets the brokers operate the way they need to operate. So that's been a real big area of focus for us, is not just automation, but customizing that automation around the specific needs of your customers and the specific needs of the brokers.
You're very customer focused SOPs, basically, that you can just automate, right?
Exactly. Yep. And that becomes really important, I think, as your brokerage grows, and as a broker in general, right? That's something that we really need to be focused on, is helping provide extra value to our customer. And that's where the broker needs to live and needs to be thinking about, as their contribution to the logistics chain is add value to the broker, add value to the carrier. I'm sorry, I said broker. I meant add value to the shipper, add value to the carrier, and work both of those relationships as truly an intermediary.
Yeah.
Here's an oddball question. Do you think we're trending, it might be 5 or 10 years, who knows, where a lot of functions, we're going to automate a lot of things, but a lot of the functions that we actually physically enter in now, or command or prompt, would just be all voice activated, and we'll just communicate, build a load, build this, and you just kind of dictate instead of type and move screens.
Absolutely. We're seeing that with the AI adoption that's coming around right now. Like one of the tools that we've built into the TMS, which is really fun to play with, and an exciting step, is when an email comes in that says something like, hey, I got to pick up today from my warehouse in DC, heading to, whatever name of my customer is in Texas. The TMS can then take that and build a load out of it, and then alert the user in the TMS that, hey, here's the load that was built off of this information. We used AI to extract more information and try to understand what my warehouse in DC means, and to understand what that customer's location in Texas is, so that we can expand on those information and fill out as much as we can. So we're not creating a perfect load, but we're creating an 80% load. And then the user can add that additional 20%, but we've saved them the 80%. And that's a tremendous step in the right direction, right? Of helping make it a little easier for the broker, and the using speech to do that is absolutely there as well. And I'll turn this into a personal conversation a little bit too. I have a son who's dyslexic, and he goes to a school that's kind of specialized in that. And dyslexics they struggle to read, right? That's one of their challenges, and typing is slow, right? They're just slow readers, slow typers. But at the school he's at, they teach him to use text to speech and speech to text, and so forth. And those tools allow him to be exceptionally fast. I would almost argue that he can write an email and a paragraph faster than I can type them, right?
Yeah.
So because he's gotten so good at it, and he learns how to use the tool to do 80% of the work. And to being real candid about it, I've used that as we design the AI components at Tai, because we're not trying to do 100% of it with speech. We're trying to get 80% and then go back and review it. And the same thing applies to our AI implementations. We're not trying to remove the user. We're not trying to remove the review. We're trying to get 80% of it done so that you can just scan through it and be like, all right, I got this. Let's rock and roll, and reduce that time and reduce that effort so that you can be more effective at all these steps, and take advantage of the technology where you can, but take advantage of the human where you need to. And so we use a term sometimes that it's, instead of human in the wheel, it's human on the wheel. So you're monitoring it, but you're not in the deep of it, right? You're not in the middle of it.
No, I totally understand that. So I've been playing around with ChatGPT a little bit with and just really at the beginning stages, but uploading data in spreadsheets and playing around with how I can get better at having AI do the work, right?
Yep.
I can probably go in and do 80% of it, and, flip through, do the formulas, look at this, look at that. But I can make errors, make a lot of errors. And you get stuck with formulas and, trying to piece it all together. If you can just prompt and say, this is what I want to do, and it just goes out and does it, and you don't have to do that manual work of tracking all the cells and things like that, and brings it back to you with your results, and then you can tweak it and you can go in and analyze it. To me, that's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
It's better than going in and trying to go through different tabs and do VLOOKUPs and everything. It's just like, oh, well, if I could just tell the AI what I want, deliver the results, and then I can double check it. That's cool.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great use of ChatGPT and the AI tools. And I use it a lot for emails. So when I get a long chain of emails, to just summarize this whole chain for me and give me the short version. Can really be really helpful.
Yeah, it really can. It really can. I was doing the same bullet point things on another AI service, right? And I've always been kind of anal about that. It's like the AI can't pick out what the main highlight, what I would pick out, right? And I started using it, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, it does do that.
Yeah.
About 80%, right? It's about 80% accurate of what I would have done. And I'm like, I can live with that.
Yeah, I think that's a key message too, is don't expect it to replace you. Don't expect it to be perfect. But man, if it gets you 80% of the way there, that's pretty darn good.
It is.
It's really good. I'd be more than happy to give away 80% of my work.
Right.
Same. Right, Casey?
Absolutely. I'm all for smarter, not harder. But yeah, it's interesting. It seems like AI a couple of months ago was something people were, questioning, right? The efficacy of it. Is it more vaporware? I think there have been a lot of promises made by tech companies to market participants in the last couple of years, but it's interesting to start to see maybe some more real use cases coming out, or stories of them. I saw a post yesterday from Santosh Sankar over at Dynamo Ventures talking about, LLMs and AI, and how you might be able to implement it for most of the different steps and procedures. But whatever people can do to make decision making a little bit easier, bring those POD, if you will, point of decision, PODM, surface those a little bit more easier to your customer, your carrier reps. That'd be a win-win for everybody. What does it look like? What does the team typically look like, Mitch, for Tai users? Are these do you have a nice mix of cradle to grave type brokers, or are these more, your team type environments where you may have 3 or 4 folks working on, an account or 2? How does that work? How many of the folks like on a team, or how many folks within an organization are, using the Tai interface, inputting data, and does the automation get better, right? When does it start at 80%, and as it learns the organization, are there ways that it can improve, or what does that look like for the user today?
Yeah. So on the Tai full truckload side, when we look at our brokers, it's a really distributed mix of models. Some are cradle to grave, some are the carrier rep model. Like, we really see a big split, and both can be really successful. So the platform supports both of them, and supports both of them really effectively, so that we can provide automation in both cases, which can sometimes be a little bit tricky. In some cases, the two pathways conflict a little bit. So that's where I was talking earlier about that flexibility that we're trying to build in and make sure that the system supports. Comes to being able to support both models, because there's a tremendous amount of merit to both. And I think that could also be a very heated conversation if we get a couple brokers pitted against each other on that topic, right?
Yes.
But the fact of it is, both are really effective, and both have their merits to be excellent, but both also have their weaknesses. Understanding where those strengths and weaknesses are in each model, and building your business around the effectiveness and the strengths that you have, the strengths of your team, is what will make you successful. So that leads kind of into that automation. Like, how much can you automate? We like to say you can automate way more than 80%.
Right.
But we get careful on that, and that we don't want to overpromise, right? We want to make sure that we're being a little bit realistic in what the expectations are. And so that's why we kind of stick to that 80%, is that we know we can beat 80. We know we can get it up to the high 90s. But we also want to make sure that the people are being thoughtful about it, and that the people are still reviewing, and we're taking advantage of all of the strengths of all of the components that we're working with. And for us, that's a really key component, is take advantage of strengths. Just like I was kind of talking about on the two different models, depending on who your team is and how your team is built up, one model may work better than the other. You may have people that do certain tasks better than others. And the same thing applies to technology. So we want to take advantage of the people where people are really good, and take advantage of technology where technology is really good. And if we balance those two and we find that line, we can use automation. We can use generative AI. We can use tools that are out there that are amazing, like Green Screen and some of the other tools and FreightWaves tools, and all these really cool tools that do pricing and help facilitate the process, and kind of bring them all together to lean on all of the strengths and give you a best-in-class TMS that takes advantage of all the great that's around us. That's what we're really striving to do.
Yeah. So how long? We've been talking about this for a year or so, Mitch, on and off, and I've taken what part of that discussion, and I use that in my discussions too. We were talking about TMS 1.0 and TMS 2.0, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. And so I find it very interesting and very true, and it resonates with everyone. And it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah. So when we talk about that, the first round of TMS, like, our goals with that were really just to have a TMS. And by the way, I built a 1.0 TMS too, right? I've been building TMS for just over 20 years now.
And we go back to, and that's TMS 1.0, right? Is exactly. TMS 1.0 is like the introduction of TMS, and the widespread adoption of of having a TMS, right? Because let's say 20 years ago, it was a small percentage of brokerages had a TMS, probably, right? And
Yeah.
and if you did, you probably built it yourself, because there weren't that many options. And TMS 1.0 was the initial adoption and building out. So just laying a little bit of foundation for you.
Exactly. We just at 1.0, we really just needed to have a TMS, right? We needed a system of record. And that was the barrier of entry, and that was the expectation, was a system of record. Just somewhere that we could keep track of all of our shipments and not shuffle papers as much. That was our level of expertise at that time and capability. So that was great, right? Super important for the phase we were at. And being able to track our shipments, or just knowing where all of our shipments were, helped us keep things from missing, like forgetting to invoice shipments or losing paperwork, right? It helped remove some of those barriers, and that was great. Definitely a very important step. But now we're at the next step. We're at the 2.0 phase. And what that means is we need to take advantage of what's available now, and that's connectivity. We keep talking about automation and AI, but connectivity and focus on excellence for the person in the seat. We get to go from just having a system of record to having a system that helps that person be extremely effective at their job. And that's the 2.0. And it's not just our industry that sees that. We see it in other industries too. And we see it like with CRMs. They went through that process too, where 1.0 CRMs were pretty basic, but then you have tools like Salesforce, that's a 2.0 CRM, and HubSpot, and some others that are really next leveling what you expect out of your CRM. And that's what we need to expect out of our TMSs as well. And that means, I mentioned connectivity. Tools 10, 15 years ago, tools like MacroPoint, Trucker Tools, Green Screens, FreightWaves, like these tools weren't there to help us do parts of what we need to operate a really effective freight brokerage, but they're available today. And if they're all standing in separate silos, we're really hurting our ability to be excellent. We need all those to come together, and your TMS has to be that platform to allow that kind of connectivity and enable it. And that also means enabling connectivity to ERP systems like Salesforce and ERP systems like Workday and NetSuite and things like that that we require to compete at the highest level. And a good TMS can do all of that and allow those tools to help you where those tools are effective, integrated right into the user experience so that it's a seamless process. And that's what we're doing at Tai, is we're really pushing that 2.0 level. And we see like the contradiction to that is where you still have like an on-premise system maybe that's locked in and doesn't have flexible APIs. Like that was great 10 years ago, but today we got to level up these expectations and help drive a better set of connectivity and better flexibility. And one of the things we like to use with that topic as well is the buy plus build model, right? So you have this customization, and you mentioned like, well, before I used to build my own, and that happens a lot. It's one of the largest TMSs, as you well know, right, Kevin, is one of the large TMSs is the home built systems. But another option is to buy a system like ours, like Tai's, that allows that connectivity and take advantage of the connectivity, which sometimes you don't even need a development team for. Sometimes you can use some of the tools like Metaphora and Clio and the other iPaaS vendors that are out there and just set up these connections with almost no code and allow amount of connectivity that was unimaginable 10 years ago. Even 5, 6 years ago, it was hard to imagine. But today, we can do it. And we can do it with a lot more ease than we used to be able to. And that model is something that if we want to compete at the highest level, we should be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would love to hear, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. How have integrations and those partnerships changed in the last 5 or 6 years since the emergence of kind of that FreightTech 1.0 wave. You guys getting better at it? Is it easier to make connections with the right folks, or be cool to get your thoughts on what you think that looks like moving forward?
Yeah, fortunately, because we have some background on the LTL space, connecting to carriers has been something that Tai's done for a long time, because we've always made direct connections to all the LTL carriers. So when the full truckload space went from, in the early days, it was good enough to just connect to DAT, truck stop, get our couple load boards in there, and we have posting service, and that was all you needed, right? And that was probably, 5-7 years ago, that was probably fine for most freight brokers. But today, you do need to connect to a lot more services, right? The trucker tools, the macro point for tracking highway, my carrier packets, those things for the insurance and the fraud prevention, and there's all these different pieces. And so what we find is that those tools are purpose built, and being that they are purpose built, they don't compete with a TMS. They're meant to be standalone products that specialize and do their specific jobs at a high level of excellence. And what that means is they really have to rely on connectivity. And that's what adds additional value to their products, is the ability to connect to TMSs. So as a TMS platform, we've embraced that from the beginning. And since we're built with connectivity in mind, as these guys started coming onto the scene and providing their services as really specialized components, it became easy for us to connect to them. And what we do constantly is work closely with those partners to make sure that we're not just connecting to their APIs, but connecting to their APIs in a way that brings value to our users.
Right.
And sometimes that's the hardest part, is like asking them, like, what do you need a user to see in a TMS to make it valuable? Like, where does that need to happen? How does that relationship work? And working together with the partners allows us to do that and elevate that. So we're not just connecting the APIs,
Right,
but also making a great experience.
And when we talk about automation, right, you need a TMS, right? It's number one. Then you need the collaboration, the integrations to have a fuller workflow, right, or more complete workflow before you can really make headways into automation, right? Because
That's right.
you can't automate in silos. It kind of, I won't say it defeats the purpose, but it makes it
too narrow.
Too narrow. Yeah. You need the integrations. You need the connectivity to have a complete workflow that is available to automate.
That's right. Yeah,
So
and
it's like a
timing
natural progression. You can't have one before the other, almost, right? For can you?
I think you need them both to work together. Like, a great example of this is we recently, we've had integration to trucker tools for a long time, and they do a great job on the track and trace side, and well, more than that. But that integration's been in our system forever. But we were just talking to a customer a couple months ago, and they were talking about, well, can I check to see if a driver supports ELD before I book them? And that was interesting, because we're like, all right, great point. Like, this makes a lot of sense. I do want to know if I have ELD tracking available before I book the freight, not necessarily after I've sent out my confirmation and after the shipment's ready to be picked up. Can I find out earlier? And so, that's something that we've been able to adapt to, and we'll work to bring that process a little bit sooner, so that you can see that trucker tools integration, but you need to see it then in the TMS. You need to see it as part of the connectivity to your load boards. So when the load board information is coming back, or your DFM information is coming back, that at that point you're seeing, like, have I used this carrier before? Do they have ELD integration? What's their fraud prevention side look like? What's the compliance look like? I get all that information right when the carrier is sending me a quote back, or right when I'm even asking if I want, can you cover this load? You cannot do that without tight integration. So even if you do use those tools without that tight integration, expecting your team to do that on every quote request they're sending out to a carrier, it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
Right? It's an unfair burden, especially because we can automate that. Right? We can provide that information in real time, in context.
Yeah, it's almost undoable to, and part of that is getting back so you get a quote back, right, and then you have to go do the legwork of tracking ELD, safety, compliance, and it is a burden. But if you get a quote back with everything else, kind of in a dashboard almost, or a one-page report, or however you want to label that, right? But something that you can just look and see, and it gives you all the information you need to make a decision all at once. A tight integration like that is it's insane. I mean, it's everybody would want that, right? And I think that's where AI and integration, everything's tracking to, right?
Absolutely, and it just gives you that ability to compete at the highest level with taking advantage of, again, we're very broker focused, right? And we believe in the broker, we support the broker, but brokers have a responsibility to make sure that they're finding the right carrier, to make sure that their carriers are compliant, to make sure that they're servicing their customer the right way. So let's help make sure that happens. And in the Tai platform, we do that with we kind of look at them as like red lights and green lights, and we show 4 icons next to the carrier's name that are either green, yellow, or red based on information that we're pulling from these services. Like, do they have insurance? If it's green, we're good. If it's red, not so good, right? Same thing with compliance and safety and so forth. So trying to bring that back, as you kind of mentioned, like a dashboard, and really easy for the broker to consume in real time before they're making decisions, and in context to making decisions.
And let's get back to the core of it. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You could spend 20 or 30 minutes of your day tying that information together every time you need to, or your employees can, or they can spend that 20 or 30 minutes of each instance on the phone with the customer.
That's right.
Which one do you want?
Exactly.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
It goes all back to that. And that's the power of it's really the power of what we're talking about here, right? Is you want to spend time doing what a computer can do, right? To make a better decision. If you want to do that legwork, or do you want to do the legwork of building a relationship?
Yeah. Let the computers do what they're good at. Let your people do what they're good at. And using the right technologies and bringing them together in the right way just gives you that tool set to be really good at what you're doing. So yeah, we love hearing that kind of thing happen, and we love being able to be a part of contributing to driving the industry forward, and giving these tools and helping provide them in compelling ways.
Yeah, definitely. So what's on kind of your forecast? What's on your hit list in the tech game going forward into 2025, right? And that could be squarely focused on Tai, or it could be something that you're seeing out there that you're very interested in, exploring and maybe tying it back at some point.
Yeah, so we talk about automation a lot, but for us, the focus as we go into 25 is going to be to continue to level up on some of the tools that we've introduced and are adapting so quickly. So for us, it'll be about customization of automation and helping provide really flexible pathways, but easy to use pathways to automate everything that a freight broker needs to be great at their day. And that includes then, like we're talking about, the connectivity, making sure that we bring the right partners' tools into the TMS in the right place, and continuing to drive that part of the process forward. as well as evolving our AI components. So we've seen a tremendous uptick this year in the adoption of some of our AI tools. And a couple of those I mentioned earlier were the email automation. So one of the things that we're really pushing forward on implementing, and that we've had implemented for a few years now, but it's evolving so fast, and now adoption is following suit with that, is the email, the mailbox. Can we automate 80% of your mailbox? And the answer to that is we can. And so we're going to continue to be iterating on that over the next year to further drive the percentage and the accuracy of emails that we can automate. And this means things like status updates. Can we bring how many emails does a broker get every day? Hey, what's going on with my shipment? This is an easy thing to answer, right? And so we want to be able to take care of those things as quickly as possible. But go ahead.
Oh, no, this is something we were talking about back on Put That Coffee Down, right? Maybe a couple of years ago. Yeah. Part of that automation too, and a very important part of it, is asking for business at the end of that. You can automate that with all those system updates and all of those easily automated communications. You can put in a call to action in there, and that's a very important thing to do.
Absolutely. And it ties the automation to the sales component, right? And the grow your business and just be great at what you do. Yeah. So yeah, for sure. And another area that we've been driving a lot of energy around is document processing. And because some of those basic emails are a little simpler to handle, but carrier invoices and PODs and lumper receipts, these documents can be complicated. Wonky, huh? They get a little wonky.
Mitch, are you telling me that there's not one standard template for an invoice that people use?
There for sure is not. That's I know this is a controversial topic here, but yeah, some of the documents that brokers and carriers are sharing with each other can be a little wonky.
Yeah, they can.
100,000 different dialects of freight out there. Yeah. What are you guys doing? Are you guys building your own AI to read those documents, or how's that project going? It's not it's yeoman's work, Mitch.
It's challenging. So we build a lot of it. We build in house. Some of it we partner with another company to help us do some of the model building with, but it all ends up being more proprietary Tai work. But we also lean in on all of the large language models that are out there. So it's almost mandatory now to lean in on those models, and you can build on top of the models really easily. So that's one of the things that keeps us on our toes. We've been doing email automation for more than 2 years now, maybe 3, but we've completely changed the way we do it. Because those large language models, ChatGPT models, weren't available 2 years ago. They are today. And so evolving our products and our AI components at a rapid iteration is something that we've really leaned in on and are taking advantage of. So that's why there's a combination of partners and proprietary tech that goes all together to make the most effective way to do it. But that also leans into why I was talking about the buy plus build. Is as a freight broker, do you really have the time and energy to invest as much as we are in that AI component? Do you really want to? But also, do you want to get left behind? And the answer to that is pretty much no. I don't want to get left behind. No, I don't want to invest in it. But if you take advantage of technology that's existing and then modify what you need or adapt it to your business needs, you get the best of both worlds. You get this fast iteration that a tech company can provide that provides context to that freight brokerage, but it's not part of their core business model, right? The core business model is service the shipper, service the carrier, and take advantage of what you can.
And that line was maybe a little bit more blurred 3 years ago than it is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
You look at it 5 or 10 years ago, if you wanted any customization with your TMS, right? Like what we're talking about, you had to build your own. right?
That's
Now
right.
you don't have to build that core foundation of it, right? You can work on the custom things that you need instead of worrying about building and maintaining and securing that core capability, right? The core
Yeah.
system, right? You can put the little gadgets on, it's like building a house, right? You don't really want to build a house to decorate a room, right? You want the house there and you
That's
can
right.
decorate the room the way you want it. But yeah, if you have to build the house yourself to decorate a room, that becomes difficult and expensive and crazy.
Exactly. That's well said, Kevin. And then you also slipped in another really important word is security. We
Yes.
have
Yeah.
some, I mean, security is so important, and the cyber attacks that are happening are scary. And then even if you think about things like I think it's almost a month now that we had the CrowdStrike outage,
Yeah.
but you know the way Tai's built, CrowdStrike didn't really impact Tai on its own at all, really. But at the same time, one of the Microsoft data centers actually failed. So it was a huge failure for Azure, in that they lost one of, I guess there's like 16 data centers in the U.S., but a component of one of their data centers went out for almost 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Now that happened at the same time as CrowdStrike, so it didn't really make the news quite as much, but it did impact Tai. And what happened at that point was we lost about 40% of our infrastructure, like just disappeared. But fortunately, like sometimes a good plan comes together, and you work on disaster recovery and you work on
Mm-hmm.
resilience, but when a real event happens, what really happens, right? Like
Yeah.
you never know, even no matter how much you test, you just never know because technology is crazy. But the fortunate thing was when that did happen, the rest of our infrastructure automatically adapted and expanded, and our
Mm-hmm.
customers never felt an impact. So we lost 40% of our infrastructure instantly,
0% of your
and our customers never noticed. And that was such a huge testament to our team and the work that they've done relentlessly to make sure we have resilience in our ability to provide a system, and be top tier. And so that was a major disaster for us, but nobody knew. We didn't publish anything on our website that said it. We didn't tell anyone because we didn't have to. Uh, it was transparent, and that kind of thing you have to ask yourself, like, can I build an infrastructure like that as a freight broker? Should I be building an
Do I want
infrastructure
to?
like that as a freight broker? Exactly. Do I want to? And those are questions that, I think are distractions for a freight broker. Like you should be focused on your core business, not the technology and the context around it, and
Mhm.
and let a TMS provider do that for you.
Yeah, I think the that harkens back a little bit to TMS 1.0
Yep.
is that decision, right? Because it was a legitimate decision at that point, right? It is like, well, I can build my own because I don't have to worry about all these things. You can't do that now. You can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, I think it's just too expensive, and not only upfront costs, but the maintenance and security and
Right.
upkeep and
And now you've got
innovation.
your macro points, your freight guards, your highways, all of these other platforms that Mitch was mentioning earlier. You need to find the connections for, right? I imagine it's harder to build that seamless environment when all those integrations and connections are on your own internal tech teams.
Yeah. And they don't stay the same either, right? Because Kevin kind of mentioned maintenance is a big factor in that. These things change all the time, and so let's make our life a little easier.
Yeah.
Take advantage of what you can, and this, you said it really well. Like in the 1.0 time frame, that decision was a little different. So let's make sure that we're making a decision today based on what technology is today rather than what it was 10 years ago, because our
Yep.
decision points should change. The capabilities have changed.
Yeah.
Some of the suggestions that I make today are probably contradictions to what I would have said 15 years ago
I'm
because
sure.
the world was different. And in 10 more years, I hope to be looking back on this and being like, man, that guy better really consider what he said.
You're exactly right on that, because it is very true.
Yeah. Maintenance is a killer. That is well said, Matt.
It is well said. It is. It's something people don't really think about until they have to, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes very expensive.
And if you don't think about it, what you end up with is a position where you've acquired so much maintenance debt that you're really far in arrears, and you end up paying a really heavy price. So I like to attribute it to, I mean, you were talking about the house example, and I can probably come up with an analogy similar to that. But if we think about our business alone, 5 years ago, our business was different than it is today. And as a good business owner, we're constantly thinking about, how do we make our business better? How do we grow our business? How do we make things smoother? Change is part of what we should be adapting for our business. Our technology should do the same thing. And our technology should be adapting with time as well. Like, we don't want to just put technology in place and then leave it there for 10 years. We want to put technology in place and have our technology stack and have our technology capabilities grow with our business. And why would we want one to grow and not the other? It doesn't really make sense to me. And so we should think about it that way. Like, am I partnering with a technology company that wants to grow with my business? Are they aligned the same way I'm aligned?
Yeah.
And that part, I think, is hugely valuable.
It is. It is. It's decisions that it's just different decisions that you have to make when you're running a freight brokerage than you did 10 years ago. But that's where the business is going. It's becoming more efficient, and it's good. Well, Mitch, thanks for dropping by on Dude, What's the Bid here with Casey and I. It's been a pleasure. It always is a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to talk with you, and getting to talk about technology is one of my favorite things to do. So thanks for listening to me go through all this, and look forward to talking to you again.
Definitely. Thank you very much. To learn more about Tai and reach out to you and your team, how does our audience do that?
Yeah, you can find us at www.tai-software.com. You can find us at LinkedIn on Tai Software. It's TAI. So please reach out to us. We're all over the place on all the social medias, and are more than happy to talk to anyone and help hopefully share some of our experiences, partner up with some freight brokers, and help everybody level up their game.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.
Casey, another great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you started a freight brokerage 5 or 10 years ago, you expect it to grow to, I don't know, whatever your magic number is that you're at today. All right, when I get to that number, I'm going to build my own TMS. That probably would have been the right thought to have in mind when starting the business. But to Mitch's point, I think things have changed a lot in the last 5 or 10 years in the industry, and
different world. We had George on. We're talking about FreightTech 1.0. We're entering FreightTech 2.0, and as everything's changing so quickly that it's difficult to do it yourself.
Right. Yeah. You want to be a freight broker, you want to be a technologist. May not be able to be both anymore.
I know, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to do. It really is. And we'll see where the market goes from here. We're going to have next week, we'll have Henry Byers from KCH Transportation on here talking about ocean imports and trucking rates. Be good to catch up with Henry again, and we'll talk the market.
Sweet.
Cool. Biggest change, what's the rate? Biggest changes in lane rates? What do you have, Casey? Anything that sticks out? Any trends that you're scoping?
Yeah, I haven't done as much research this week on rates. I've been moving for the most part. But I'm planning to dive into that stuff a little bit more deeply next week when we have Hammer and Hank Byers on the show. It'll be a much more rate and market focused discussion. I'm sure I'll never forget when he published that Ocean article.
Oh, I know, right?
A couple of years ago on a Friday that just
blew
sent
up
the freight market into a tailspin.
Yeah,
but I think he did call the rally on the way back out. So
he did, yeah.
Hank
and he's talking about a rally right now, so
it's
going to be very interesting to catch up with Byers.
We've been in this downtrend for 28 months, right? I mean, it's time to start ticking upwards. It would be counterintuitive if we stayed down here in the bear swing much longer.
I know. Cool. Well, I think we'll wrap it right here, and everyone have a great Labor Day weekend. Monday is the official end of summer. It's the kickoff of college football season, and we'll see how we go into the fourth quarter. We've got one more month of the third.
That's right, baby. Put them up.
Exactly. Cool. All right. Well, wrap it up, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.